A whooping, take one. Hey, thank you very much for joining me for this very special motorcycle review. And I say that because it is a little bit different than my usual reviews. Essentially, I messaged a small Italian manufacturer called Moto Morini a few weeks back. Now, I asked them if I could test ride one of their bikes. They passed me on to their UK and Ireland distributor, a man called Ben Wiley, and he very graciously invited me up to test ride the Corsaro ZZ. Without any further ado, please enjoy the actual test day, and then we'll meet back here in a few moments and I can break down some of the stats. I don't even really have to explain it or go into depth. Just showing you what I'm looking at is pretty much enough to explain how nice today is. That, for anyone unversed, is the Ponderosa Cafe, and that is a fantastic stretch of tarmac. Now, I saw these a little while back, first at the Excel Centre. I'm aware of the brand, but not that well. Or the manufacturer, I should say. But then I spotted them at the Excel Centre in London for the MCN show, and I was drawn in, I was intrigued. So this was improved in 2017. They did already have a Moto Morini Corsaro, and obviously then they needed to update it, upgrade it, so they have done. 2017 is what I'm sat on. This is the Corsaro ZZ. It is a 1200cc or 1187cc, 87 degree V-twin. It puts out around 140 brake horsepower and 92 foot-pounds of torque. So this is a, as I say, a V-twin over squared so that it revs out a little freer. Having said that, it still reaches its peak horsepower at 8,500 revs, so it doesn't rev that high. That burble is absolutely stunning. The brakes are very good, they are very precise. It's got a lot of bite on the front, I have to say. The back, not quite so much. I would want a little more maybe, or certainly a little bit more feel. Haven't been able to lock it up. Can't actually get my words out. You'll forgive me, I'm sure, looking at what I'm looking at. But the back isn't as strong as the front. It is still a Brembo though. It really does get at it quick. That initial punch is something to behold. I could see how that would be extremely enticing and addictive. In case you've not been this way before, this is the Nantigarth Pass. It can be a little complex, but it's a f***ing fantastic place to test a bike. God, you can adjust that so much. That is feather light. It's nimble, this is really nimble. And when it's moving, when it is motoring on, it feels really light. It's got a slipper clutch, that's probably good for me today. I'm not quite warmed up. Keep cocking up those down changes. Throttle response is quite nice. It's not abrupt. It feels alive. It feels sensitive, as all of this bike does really. There's no traction control. It's just twist the throttle and go. There's no rider modes. It's just a bloody brilliant bike. I wouldn't be able to tell you about reliability, how this thing's going to fare in terms of servicing. Obviously Morini are based in Italy. Couldn't tell you any of those questions, but trust me, if it was working well, and I have no reason to believe it wouldn't, this one's working fine, you'd be getting off it with a massive smile on your face. You really would. Grinning from ear to ear. That is gorgeous. Very nice. First things first, the engine. Let's start obvious. It's got a 1200cc, or should I say 1187cc
87-degree V-twin. It develops about 137 brake horsepower, and I say about because I've seen listed 140 as well. That's at 8,500 revs. It develops 92 foot-pounds, and that's at 6,750 revs. It's what they call over-squared, so that it can rev out a little bit happier, hence the 8,500 for peak horsepower. To help you out, it actually does have a shift light on the dash as well, which confused me. I'll fully admit I didn't know what it was to start with until I saw it lighting up like a Christmas tree, and then realised that I was actually kind of short shifting, and that really comes from the fact that it's got so much grunt down low in the rev range. If you do hold on to it, it will climb to its peak horsepower, and you can feel it start to get a little bit keener. Not stupidly so, it's not like a 4-cylinder where it shoots off, but you can chase up to 8,500 revs, which is quite nice if you like to hang on to a gear a little bit longer. The only thing I'll say is that if you're anything like me, you probably won't end up doing that. One, because the initial punch is just so satisfying, that's kind of all I needed to get me off. And then also because it vibes a little bit when you get high up in the rev range. Nothing untoward, it's not like it's shaking your bones, but you can feel it, and to me, I always attribute that feeling to kind of wringing the tits off an engine and abusing it, and I don't really like that feeling. But that's completely down to taste, because believe me, the bike is happy sitting at 7,000 revs.
Want me to put the hammer down?
Suspension comes from an Italian company called Mupo, or Mupo, M-U-P-O, however you're supposed to pronounce that, I'm sorry. And it's fully adjustable front and back. Definitely on the sportier side, firm on the front and very firm on the rear. Probably a little stiffer than I would generally go for with the rear shock. I will caveat that just by saying that this won't necessarily feel like the bike that you get from Moto Morini if you end up buying one of these, because Ben had actually adjusted the rear shock on the bike that I was riding. If we're taking someone's opinion on setting up bike suspension though, out of myself and Ben, well, I'm going to side with Ben, because Ben's raced the Isle of Man TT, so I think he knows a thing or two about setting up a bike and its suspension. In fact, any of the footage you see of the Corsaro on track is of Ben and not of me, sadly. That's why he looks like he knows what he's doing. So on the Corsaro, you've got Brembo M50s on the front. They are, of course, 4-piston. They are radial mounted, they are monoblock caliper, they are every fancy buzzword you can get for great brakes, good stopping power. It also has Brembos on the back, no surprise there. The only surprise comes in the form of the fact that it was maybe a little stiffer than the front. The front brakes, fantastic, absolutely no complaints from me for that. On the rear, like I say, it was maybe a little dulled off.
Let's give it some motion lotion. Don't know why you're... Oh, as if you're in neutral, as if you are... Now you're in neutral, good. Right. Trust that, don't trust that. There you go. Lesson 1.
Then let's talk about the geometry and the weight of this bike. It's coming in at about 192 kilograms dry. That's around about the same as everything else I've tested recently. Wheelbase is coming in at 1,450 millimeters. That's the same sort of length actually as a speed triple. Seat height of 860 millimeters. If you are a little bit taller, I'm going to say you're going to appreciate that. For anyone else, if you're worried, I'm 5'10", and I could actually still even flat foot, even with the fairly wide seat that this bike's got as well. Any other notable additions? Well, it's got one of the sweetest sounding exhaust notes I've ever heard, especially stock, especially considering it's Euro 4. Apparently, that is legal. Want to hear them?
Ready for it.
The screen looks very pretty, and there is something truly enjoyable about seeing the little Moto Morini symbol light up when you actually turn this thing on. You can adjust and change themes on it, which is quite fun. I don't know, it depends what your tastes are. I just stuck it in one really. I quite liked having the rev gauge go up in an analog fashion, but they have more than a few themes that you can choose between. It's got aluminium forged rims, it's got carbon fiber all over the thing just to cut down on weight, and also a little bit to do with the style, and LED headlights. And LED indicators, I believe they come from Rizoma.
Trying to refrain from personifying this thing, because the only review I've seen of the Corsaro, the older one, had some pervy sounding Englishmen talking about Italian ladies, and well, it turned me off. Did not enjoy it one bit. Italian ladies, and light it up.
Rider modes and traction control. This will be a very short conversation. It doesn't have any. This thing is not ride-by-wire. That means that it doesn't have any rider aids and it doesn't have any rider modes. The only thing it does have, obviously for Euro 4, is ABS, but that is pretty much it. But if you're a fan of the old school and an old school feel to a bike, well, that's probably actually a plus for you. There's no interference. You know exactly what you're putting through that throttle comes through your rear wheel. It is, I think, in one of the truest senses, a proper rider's bike. Yes, it's a bit of a pose tool. Yes, people will look at it. It's a head turner, but it shouldn't be overlooked that this is a performance bike. It really does handle well. And when you get it right, it is really rewarding, really enjoyable, and really addictive. I know that if I had one, the moment I stepped off that thing, give me 10 minutes max, and I'd want to get back on it. It's not going to get old for the whole day. That is not going to get old. Now, if I've convinced you so far that this bike is worth your attention, you've probably got one question on your minds, and that is, how much does the bike cost? Well, I won't beat around the bush. It costs around £16,500. Firstly, I'll just say that it does encompass a lot of very performance-driven parts. It's got full race suspension in the form of Mupo, it's got full race brakes in the form of Brembo, and it's got one of the most characterful engines I've ever had the privilege of using. Objectively speaking then, I would say that it justifies the majority of its price. The rest of the price, well, that's that unquantifiable element. That's the fact that this bike is truly different from its competition. Fair enough, you could go into any major manufacturer's showroom, pick your poison, and they'll ask you what colour you want it in. This is not that kind of bike. This is a special thing. It's something that promotes intrigue. And if you like that, then you buy into the brand. Thank you to Moto Morini for lending me the bike. Massive thanks to Ben Wiley for all his help. And thank you to you for watching. If you've got any questions, and to be perfectly frank, I'd be offended if you didn't have questions about this bike, feel free to leave them down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can with any information you might need. If you want to hit the like button down there, that will mean that you liked the video. And if you want to hit the subscribe button down there, that means you liked me. And that's even more important. And if I haven't mentioned already, I am massively appreciative of all the help and support that you've given me so far. So hopefully see you in the next video. Ta-ra. Ta-ta-ra. Ciao. It's Italian, isn't it? Bye.